The stars shimmered like tiny diamonds scattered across the endless black canvas of space. On board the U.S. Vanguard, a quiet hum filled the air as the crew went about their duties. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his sharp blue eyes scanning the monitors in front of him. He was a man who carried himself with calm authority, even in moments of uncertainty. Around him, the soft glow of control panels lit up the faces of his team, each one focused and alert. Lieutenant Rachel Morgan, the communications officer, sat at her station. She was young but exceptionally talented, her fingers dancing across the keys as she monitored incoming signals. Suddenly, the ship's AI system interrupted the silence with a cold, mechanical voice. "Alert. Enemy warship detected." The words hung in the air, sharp and unwelcome. Everyone froze for a split second before snapping into action. "Rachel, confirm that signal," Hayes ordered, his tone steady but firm. Rachel nodded quickly, her hands moving faster over the controls. After a few tense moments, she looked up at Hayes. "It's real, sir. A Zorathian warship. They're closing in fast." The name sent a ripple of unease through the bridge. The Zorathians were infamous for their hostility toward humanity. Their sleek, menacing ships were feared across the galaxy, and encounters with them rarely ended well. Chief Engineer Jack Riley, a gruff but dependable man, stepped closer to Hayes. "We're outgunned, Captain. Their weapons are far superior to ours." Hayes didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Ensign Emily Dawson, the rookie navigator. "Emily, plot us a course to avoid direct engagement. We need time to figure this out." Emily swallowed hard but nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she worked on the navigation console. She had joined the Vanguard only months ago, and this was her first real test under pressure. As the crew scrambled to prepare, Lieutenant Alex Carter, the ship's weapons specialist, double-checked the arsenal. He was a no-nonsense man with a knack for precision. "Sir, our shields are at full strength, but if they hit us with their plasma cannons, we won't last long," he reported grimly. Despite the dire situation, Hayes remained composed. He knew panic would only make things worse. "Stay sharp, everyone. We've faced tough odds before, and we'll face them again. For now, let's focus on staying alive." Rachel tried to establish contact with the approaching warship, hoping for a chance at diplomacy. "This is the U.S. Vanguard. We mean no harm. Please respond." Silence greeted her attempt. Moments later, the view screen flickered to life, revealing the massive silhouette of the Zorathian ship against the backdrop of stars. Its jagged design looked almost predatory, as though it were built to intimidate. Then came the reply, a single phrase transmitted in broken English. "Humans, exterminate." The chilling message sent a shiver down everyone's spines. There would be no negotiation. Hayes clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "All right, listen up," he said, raising his voice just enough to command attention. "We're not going down without a fight. Jack, I want every ounce of power diverted to the engines. Alex, arm everything we've got. And Rachel, keep trying to hail them. Maybe we can buy ourselves some time." As the crew sprang into action, Hayes allowed himself a brief moment to reflect. Humanity had come so far, venturing into the stars with hope and ambition. But now, facing an enemy bent on destruction, he realized how fragile their progress truly was. Still, he refused to give up. Not today. Not while he was in command. The Vanguard surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it prepared to face the looming threat. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: humanity was here, and it wasn't backing down. The Zorathian warship grew larger on the view screen, its jagged edges glinting menacingly in the light of a distant star. The crew of the U.S. Vanguard worked tirelessly, their movements quick but deliberate as they braced for what was coming. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the approaching threat. He knew the odds were against them, but he also knew that giving up wasn't an option. Lieutenant Rachel Morgan tried once more to establish communication. This is Commander Hayes of the U.S. Vanguard. We seek peaceful resolution. Please respond. Her voice was calm, though her hands trembled slightly as she waited for a reply. Seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the same chilling message came through. Humans, exterminate. Hayes clenched his fists but kept his composure. All right, enough trying to talk. Let's focus on staying alive, he said firmly. The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Zorathians didn't: creativity and determination. Dr. Laura Bennett, the ship's biologist, approached Hayes with an idea. She had spent years studying alien species, including the Zorathians. Captain, I've reviewed data from past encounters with their ships. Their shields are powered by plasma cores. If we can disrupt those cores, even briefly, it might give us an opening to strike back, she explained. Hayes considered her words carefully. Doable, but how do we get close enough to hit their core without getting blown apart? He asked. Laura hesitated before responding. We'd need to deploy something small and fast. A shuttle, maybe. Something they wouldn't see coming until it's too late. Before Hayes could respond, Ensign Emily Dawson spoke up. Sir, I can do it, she said, surprising even herself. Emily was still new to the crew, but she had spent countless hours studying the Vanguard systems. She knew the shuttle inside and out. I can pilot it close enough to plant a device near their plasma core. It's risky, but it might work. Hayes looked at her, weighing the risks. Sending someone on such a dangerous mission wasn't easy, especially when that someone was as inexperienced as Emily. But time was running out, and he didn't have many options. Are you sure about this, Ensign? He asked, his tone softening slightly. Emily swallowed hard but nodded. Yes, sir. I know the shuttle better than anyone else here. If anyone can pull this off, it's me. Hayes gave her a long look before finally nodding. All right, Dawson. You're on. Jack, prep the shuttle, and make sure it's armed with everything we've got. Alex, load an EMP device onto it. We'll use that to disable their shields. Jack Riley, the chief engineer, immediately set to work, reinforcing the shuttle's defenses and ensuring it was ready for the mission. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Alex Carter prepared the EMP device, double-checking its settings to ensure it would function properly. Everyone moved with purpose, knowing that failure wasn't an option. As Emily suited up, Hayes pulled her aside for a moment. Listen to me, Dawson. This isn't just about bravery. It's about coming back alive. Do your job, but don't take unnecessary risks. Understood? Emily met his gaze and nodded. Understood, sir. Minutes later, the shuttle detached from the Vanguard, its small frame disappearing into the vastness of space. On board, Emily took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never been in combat before, let alone flown a solo mission. But she reminded herself why she had volunteered: for the crew, for humanity, and for the chance to prove herself. Back on the Vanguard, the crew watched anxiously as the shuttle made its way toward the Zorathian warship. Hayes gripped the railing tightly, his knuckles white. Come on, Dawson, he muttered under his breath. You can do this. On the view screen, the Zorathian ship loomed larger, its weapons charging for another attack. The Vanguard shook violently as enemy fire grazed its shields. Shields holding at 60%, shouted Alex, his voice tense. Keep us steady, Hayes ordered. We need to buy Dawson as much time as possible. Emily navigated the shuttle through the debris field left behind by earlier battles, using it as cover. Her hands trembled on the controls, but she forced herself to focus. Closer and closer she got to the enemy ship, her mind racing with calculations and contingency plans. She knew one mistake could mean disaster, not just for her, but for everyone aboard the Vanguard. Finally, she reached the optimal position near the Zorathian plasma core. Taking a deep breath, she activated the EMP device. A surge of energy pulsed outward, temporarily disabling the enemy shields. Back on the Vanguard, cheers erupted as Hayes seized the opportunity. "Alex, fire everything we've got," he commanded. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time, hope flickered in the hearts of the Vanguard's crew. The EMP pulse from Ensign Emily Dawson's shuttle rippled through space like an invisible wave, striking the Zorathian warship with precision. For a brief moment, the enemy's shields flickered and vanished, leaving their massive vessel exposed. On board the U.S. Vanguard, Lieutenant Alex Carter didn't waste a second. His fingers flew across the weapons console as he unleashed a barrage of photon torpedoes toward the vulnerable target. "Direct hit," Alex shouted, his voice filled with both relief and triumph. The view screen showed explosions erupting along the Zorathian ship's hull, sending plumes of smoke and debris spiraling into space. Commander Daniel Hayes allowed himself a small smile, but it quickly faded. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "They're not done." He was right. The Zorathians recovered quickly, their shields reactivating within moments. Though damaged, their warship remained operational, and they retaliated with a fury that shook the Vanguard to its core. The human ship rocked violently as another volley of energy beams struck its shields. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, and sparks flew from overloaded consoles. "Shields down to 40%. Lieutenant Rachel Morgan called out, her voice tight with urgency. Hayes gripped the railing, steadying himself against the chaos. "Jack, how much longer can we hold up?" he asked, turning to Chief Engineer Jack Riley. Riley wiped sweat from his brow as he studied the damage reports. "Not long, Captain. Another direct hit, and we'll lose life support." Hayes nodded grimly. They had bought themselves some time, but the Zorathians weren't backing down. He glanced at the view screen, where Emily's shuttle was still visible, retreating back toward the Vanguard after completing its mission. "Emily, get back here now," he said into the comm system. "You've done enough." "I'm on my way, sir," Emily replied, her voice shaky but determined. She maneuvered the shuttle through the ongoing firefight, narrowly avoiding blasts from the Zorathian cannons. Her hands trembled on the controls, but she refused to let fear take over. The Vanguard was counting on her. Back on the bridge, Dr. Laura Bennett approached Hayes with new information. "Captain, I've been analyzing their attack patterns. Their weapons require a brief cooldown period after each salvo. If we time our counterattacks carefully, we might be able to exploit that weakness." Hayes considered her words. It was a slim chance, but it was better than nothing. "All right, everyone, listen up," he announced, raising his voice above the noise. "We're going to play this smart. Alex, wait for their next attack to finish, then hit them hard during their cooldown. Rachel, keep monitoring their movements. You're our eyes out there. Jack, make sure those engines are ready in case we need to move fast." The crew sprang into action, each member focused on their task. As the Zorathians fired another round of energy beams, the Vanguard absorbed the impact, its shields holding steady despite the strain. Then came the critical moment. The enemy paused to recharge their weapons. "Now, Alex," Hayes barked. Alex pressed the firing controls, sending a concentrated blast straight at the Zorathian ship. The shot connected perfectly, causing another series of explosions that lit up the view screen. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Hayes silenced them with a sharp wave of his hand. "Stay focused. We're not out of this yet." Meanwhile, Emily's shuttle finally docked safely with the Vanguard. She stumbled onto the bridge, pale but unharmed, greeted by relieved looks from the crew. Hayes gave her a quick nod of approval. "Good work, Dawson. Get to your station. We'll need you if things go south again." As Emily took her seat, Hayes turned his attention back to the battle. The Zorathians were wounded but far from defeated. Their ship loomed large on the view screen, its jagged silhouette still menacing despite the damage it had sustained. "Sir," Rachel said suddenly, her tone urgent, "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors. Another Zorathian ship. It's entering the sector." The news hit the crew like a punch to the gut. One enemy warship was bad enough. 2 would almost certainly mean disaster. Hayes clenched his jaw, his mind racing for solutions. Reinforcements were too far away to reach them in time. They were on their own. "Laura, is there anything else we can use against them?" Hayes asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Laura hesitated before responding. "Maybe. If we can hack into their communication network, we could spread misinformation. Make them think the second ship is hostile to their own forces. It's risky, but it might buy us some time." Hayes nodded slowly. "Do it. Rachel, assist her. Everyone else, stay sharp. This fight isn't over yet." As the crew scrambled to execute the plan, Hayes stared out at the vastness of space. Humanity had always faced overwhelming odds, but they had survived because of their ingenuity and resilience. Today wouldn't be any different, or so he hoped. The bridge of the U.S. Vanguard buzzed with tension as Dr. Laura Bennett and Lieutenant Rachel Morgan worked side by side at a shared console. Their task was daunting: hack into the Zorathian communication network and plant false messages to confuse the incoming second warship. The plan was risky, but it was the only chance they had to survive. Laura's fingers moved quickly over the controls, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I found a weak point in their encryption," she said, her voice low but steady. "If we can slip in here, we might be able to make them think their reinforcements are traitors." Rachel nodded, her eyes scanning the data streams flowing across the screen. "How do we sell it? They're not going to believe just anything. We add details, specific codes and phrases they use internally," Laura replied. "It'll take time, but if we get it right, they'll turn on each other long enough for us to escape or fight back." As the two women worked, Commander Daniel Hayes paced the bridge, his mind racing. Every few seconds, he glanced at the view screen, where the first Zorathian warship continued its relentless assault. The Vanguard's shields were holding, but barely. Another direct hit could spell disaster. "Captain," Chief Engineer Jack Riley called out from his station, "life support is stabilizing, but we can't take another big hit without losing critical systems." Hayes clenched his fists. "Keep patching what you can, Jack. We're running out of options." Lieutenant Alex Carter remained at his post, ready to fire whenever the enemy paused. His sharp eyes never left the targeting console. "They're charging weapons again," he warned. "Brace for impact." The Vanguard shuddered violently as another blast struck its shields. Sparks flew from nearby panels, and several crew members stumbled to keep their balance. Despite the chaos, no one stopped working. Everyone knew that giving up meant certain death. Back at the communications station, Laura and Rachel made progress. "Almost there," Laura muttered under her breath. She typed furiously, inserting fabricated messages into the Zorathian network. Rachel double-checked each line of code, ensuring nothing seemed suspicious. Finally, Laura leaned back slightly, exhaling a shaky breath. "Done. The message is live. Now we wait and hope they fall for it." Moments later, the view screen showed the second Zorathian ship emerging from hyperspace. It was massive, even larger than the first, and its presence sent a wave of dread through the crew. But then something unexpected happened. The two Zorathian ships began exchanging signals. "What are they doing?" Hayes asked, stepping closer to the main view screen. Rachel monitored the transmissions closely. "They're arguing," she reported. "Our fake message is causing confusion. The second ship thinks the first one has been compromised by humans." Hayes allowed himself a small flicker of hope. "Good work, ladies. Keep feeding them misinformation. Let's see how long we can stretch this." But the reprieve didn't last long. The first Zorathian ship fired a warning shot at its supposed ally, and the second responded in kind. Explosions erupted between the two vessels as they turned on each other. The sight was both surreal and terrifying, a deadly dance of mistrust fueled by human ingenuity. On the Vanguard, the crew watched in stunned silence. For now, the immediate threat had shifted, but everyone knew it wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the Zorathians would realize the truth. Sir, Ensign Emily Dawson spoke up, her voice breaking the quiet. Their shields are down while they're fighting each other. If we act now, we could disable both ships. Hayes hesitated, weighing the risks. Attacking now could end the threat permanently, but it could also provoke a united retaliation if they failed. Alex, prepare the cannons, but hold your fire until I give the order, he instructed. Let's see how this plays out first. As the battle between the Zorathian ships raged on, the Vanguard limped away, putting distance between itself and the chaos. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage sustained during the earlier attacks. Sparks continued to fly in engineering, but Jack Riley refused to give up. He crawled through tight spaces, welding broken circuits and rerouting power to keep the ship operational. Meanwhile, Laura and Rachel stayed glued to the communications console, tweaking their false messages to deepen the rift between the Zorathian forces. They're starting to question everything, Rachel said, a hint of pride in her voice, even their own commanders. Hayes watched the scene unfold on the view screen, his expression unreadable. Humanity had survived countless challenges throughout history, often relying on cleverness rather than brute strength. Today was no different. Against overwhelming odds, his crew had found a way to tip the scales in their favor, even if only temporarily. But Hayes knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Space was vast and unpredictable, and danger always lurked around the next corner. For now, though, the Vanguard lived to fight another day. And that was enough. The battle between the two Zorathian warships raged on, their weapons tearing into each other with devastating force. On board the U.S. Vanguard, the crew watched in tense silence as their enemies fought amongst themselves. The plan had worked, so far. The false messages planted by Dr. Laura Bennett and Lieutenant Rachel Morgan had sown enough confusion to turn the Zorathians against one another. But Commander Daniel Hayes knew this fragile advantage wouldn't last forever. Sir, Rachel said, her voice sharp with urgency. Their communication channels are starting to stabilize. They're questioning the source of the misinformation. Hayes clenched his jaw. How much time do we have before they figure it out? Rachel hesitated, glancing at her console. Minutes, maybe less. Hayes turned to Ensign Emily Dawson. Emily, plot us a course out of here. We need to put as much distance between us and them as possible while we still can. Emily nodded quickly, her fingers flying over the navigation controls. She calculated a route through a nearby asteroid field, hoping the dense rocks would provide cover. Course set, sir. Ready to engage engines on your mark. Before Hayes could give the order, Chief Engineer Jack Riley stepped forward. His face was pale, and sweat dripped from his forehead. Captain, there's a problem. Our main engine is failing. If we try to jump to full speed now, we risk blowing it entirely. Hayes cursed under his breath. Without full power, the Vanguard wouldn't be able to outrun the Zorathians once they realized what was happening. He turned to Riley. Can you fix it? Riley shook his head grimly. Not without shutting down the engine completely for repairs. That'll leave us dead in the water for at least 10 minutes. 10 minutes might as well have been an eternity in their situation. Hayes glanced at the view screen, where the Zorathian ships continued to exchange fire. Smoke and debris filled the space around them, but neither vessel showed signs of giving up. It was only a matter of time before one side emerged victorious, and then turned its attention back to the Vanguard. All right, Hayes said, making a decision. Jack, get to work on those repairs. Everyone else, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We'll use the asteroid field to buy ourselves some time. As Riley rushed to engineering, the rest of the crew sprang into action. Lieutenant Alex Carter manned the weapons console, ready to defend the ship if necessary. Shields are holding steady. For now, he reported, his eyes scanning the monitors. Emily guided the Vanguard toward the asteroid field, weaving carefully between the massive rocks. The ship rocked violently as smaller fragments collided with its hull, but the thick metal protected them from serious damage. For a few precious moments, the asteroids blocked the Zorathians' view of the Vanguard. giving the crew a slim chance to survive. Back in engineering, Jack Riley worked tirelessly to repair the engine. Sparks flew around him as he dismantled panels and rerouted power lines. His hands moved quickly, even as exhaustion weighed heavily on him. He knew the fate of the entire crew depended on his ability to fix the problem in time. On the bridge, Hayes kept a close eye on the Zorathian ships. Their internal conflict was dying down, and both vessels seemed to realize something was wrong. One of them fired a probing shot into the asteroid field, narrowly missing the Vanguard. "They're onto us," Alex warned, gripping the controls tightly. Hayes nodded. "Hold position. If they come through that field, we'll make them regret it." Meanwhile, Laura and Rachel continued feeding false data into the Zorathian network, trying to prolong the confusion. "They're starting to trace the signal back to us," Rachel said, panic creeping into her voice. "Scramble it," Laura instructed, typing furiously. "We need to erase all traces of our interference." Just as the Zorathians began closing in, Jack's voice crackled over the comm system. "Engines back online, Captain. We're good to go." Hayes didn't hesitate. "Emily, punch it. Get us out of here." Emily pushed the throttle forward, and the Vanguard surged ahead, leaving the asteroid field behind. The Zorathians gave chase, but their damaged ships were slower than usual. As the Vanguard disappeared into the vastness of space, Hayes allowed himself a small sigh of relief. For now, they had escaped, but Hayes knew the fight wasn't over. Humanity had proven its resilience once again, but the galaxy was a dangerous place, and somewhere out there, the Zorathians would regroup, vowing revenge. Still, as the Vanguard limped toward safety, Hayes felt a quiet pride swell within him. Against impossible odds, his crew had held together. They had shown courage, ingenuity, and teamwork, the very qualities that defined humanity. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The U.S. Vanguard raced through space, its engines roaring as it fled the chaos left behind. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the ship running, knowing that even a small mistake could cost them everything. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the rear view screen. The Zorathian ships were still far away, but their pursuit was relentless. "Sir," Ensign Emily Dawson called out, her voice tense. "They're gaining on us. Their engines must be repairing faster than we thought." Hayes clenched his fists. "How long until we reach the nearest starbase?" Emily checked her console. "At this speed, 6 hours, but our shields won't hold that long if they catch up." Chief Engineer Jack Riley stepped onto the bridge, his face streaked with grease and exhaustion. "Captain, I've rerouted all available power to the engines, but we're pushing them past their limits. If we don't ease off soon, we'll burn them out completely." Hayes nodded grimly. "Understood. Keep them running as long as you can, Jack. We need every second we can get." Lieutenant Alex Carter remained at his station, his hands hovering over the weapons controls. "Their weapons are charging again," he warned. "They're about to fire." The Vanguard shuddered violently as another blast struck its weakened shields. Sparks flew across the bridge, and several crew members stumbled to stay upright. Rachel Morgan, the communications officer, shouted over the noise. "Shields are down to 20%. One more hit like that, and we're done for." Hayes turned to Dr. Laura Bennett, who had been quietly observing the situation. "Laura, is there anything else we can do? Any way to slow them down?" Laura hesitated before responding. "There's one option, but it's risky. We could release a decoy drone programmed to mimic our ship's signature. It might buy us some time while they waste shots on it." "Do it," Hayes ordered without hesitation. "Alex, prepare the drone. Launch it on my mark." As Alex prepared the decoy, Jack Riley returned to engineering to ensure the ship's systems stayed online. His body ached from hours of non-stop work, but he refused to give up. He crawled through tight spaces, tightening loose connections and replacing damaged components. Every second counted, and he knew the lives of everyone aboard depended on him. On the bridge, Alex reported that the decoy was ready. "Launching now," he said, pressing the controls. The small drone shot out from the Vanguard, emitting signals designed to trick the Zorathians into thinking it was their target. For a moment, it seemed to work. The enemy ships redirected their fire toward the drone, blasting it into pieces. But the relief was short-lived. Moments later, the Zorathians realized the deception and resumed their pursuit with renewed fury. "Captain," Emily said urgently, "we're not going to make it to the starbase in time. They'll catch us before then." Hayes took a deep breath, his mind racing. Then he made a decision. "Jack, shut down all non-essential systems and divert every ounce of power to the engines. We're going to jump to maximum speed, even if it destroys the engines. It's the only way." Riley hesitated. "If we push the engines too hard, they'll overload. We could lose propulsion entirely." "I know," Hayes replied firmly. "But if we don't try, we're dead anyway. Do it." Jack nodded and rushed back to engineering. Minutes later, the Vanguard surged forward with incredible speed, leaving the Zorathian ships far behind. The strain on the engines was immense, and warning alarms blared throughout the ship. Smoke began filling the corridors, but the crew held on, determined to survive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emily's voice broke through the tension. "Sir, we're approaching the starbase. They've detected us and are sending reinforcements." Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "Good work, everyone. Hold on just a little longer." The Vanguard limped into the safety of the starbase's docking bay, its battered hull groaning under the stress of the journey. As the crew disembarked, many collapsed in exhaustion, their faces pale but triumphant. Hayes looked around at his team, pride swelling in his chest. Against overwhelming odds, they had survived. But Hayes knew the fight wasn't over. The Zorathians would return, angrier and more dangerous than ever. For now, though, humanity had proven once again that it wouldn't go down without a fight. And as long as there were people willing to stand together, hope would always remain. The U.S. Vanguard sat in the docking bay of the starbase, its battered frame a testament to the battle it had endured. Crew members moved slowly, their bodies weary but their spirits unbroken. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the observation deck, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The Zorathians were still out there, and he knew they wouldn't stop until humanity was wiped from the stars, or they were stopped first. Behind him, Chief Engineer Jack Riley approached, his face lined with exhaustion. "Captain, we've done all we can for now. The engines are stable, but they'll need a full overhaul before we're ready for another fight." Hayes nodded without turning around. "Good work, Jack. You kept us alive when it mattered most." Riley hesitated, then added, "We got lucky this time. Next time might not go so well." Hayes turned to face him, his expression firm but calm. Luck had little to do with it. It was skill, determination, and teamwork that got us through. And if we have to face them again, we'll do the same thing, find a way to win. As Riley left, Lieutenant Rachel Morgan joined Hayes on the observation deck. She held a data pad in her hands, her eyes scanning the information on it. "Sir, I've been reviewing our encounter with the Zorathians. Their ships are powerful, but they rely too heavily on their shields. If we can find a way to exploit that weakness consistently, we might stand a chance in future battles." Hayes took the data pad and glanced at it briefly. "Good thinking, Rachel. Share this with the rest of the fleet. Every bit of knowledge helps." Rachel nodded, then hesitated. "Do you think we'll see them again?" Hayes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked back out at the stars. "They'll come back. They always do, but next time, we'll be ready." Back on the bridge, Ensign Emily Dawson sat at her station, replaying the events of the battle in her mind. She had volunteered for a dangerous mission and survived, proving to herself and to her crewmates that she belonged on the Vanguard. Lieutenant Alex Carter walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. You did good out there, Dawson. We wouldn't have made it without you. Emily smiled faintly, though her eyes still reflected the weight of what they had faced. Thanks, Alex. I just hope I can keep doing my part. Dr. Laura Bennett entered the bridge carrying a folder of notes. Her plan to hack into the Zorathian communication network had worked, but she knew it wasn't foolproof. Captain, she said, addressing Hayes as he returned to the bridge, we need to improve our countermeasures against their technology. If we encounter them again, we'll need more than tricks to survive. Hayes agreed. Start working on it, Laura. Gather a team if you need to. We'll use every resource we have to prepare. As the hours passed, the crew began to regroup, sharing stories of the battle and tending to their wounds. Some laughed nervously, others cried quietly, but all were united by the shared experience of survival. Humanity had once again proven its resilience, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Later that evening, Hayes gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. He looked around at the tired but determined faces of his team. Today we live to fight another day. But tomorrow isn't promised. The galaxy is vast, and danger lurks around every corner. What matters is how we respond to it. Together, we've shown that humanity isn't afraid to stand up for itself. We won't back down. Not today. Not ever. The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Hayes stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the endless sea of stars. Out there, somewhere, the Zorathians are regrouping. They'll come for us again, and when they do, we'll be waiting. Because no matter how many times they try to extinguish us, one thing will always remain true. We're here. Humanity is here, and we're not going anywhere. As the meeting ended, the crew dispersed, each person carrying a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be difficult, but they had faced impossible odds before and emerged stronger. In the quiet moments that followed, Hayes allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had come so far, reaching for the stars with hope and courage. And as long as people like his crew existed, the light of humanity would continue to shine, even in the darkest corners of the universe.